Good morning. You are attending the Refrigeration Facility Compliance webinar. In today's presentation, we're going to cover the registration process and the reporting process for the Greenhouse Gas Monitoring and Reporting Rule. So to start, we're going to look at registering those facilities first. And registration and reporting will all be done online through our NJDEP online portal. These are the instructions for how to register the facility that you have that has a refrigeration facilities. Now, I'm not going to go over how to make your NJDEP online account, but if you go to njdeponline.com, you'll be able to see the how to do that registration, and there's step-by-step instructions there. I'm going to go over the instructions for how to do the registration once you already have your NJDEP online account. So the very first step after you log in, you'll need to add the Greenhouse Gas Monitoring and Reporting Rule to your service selection. So I know that a lot of you have probably already done this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining each one of these steps. And these instructions are online as well, so you can use these to go step by step. But if you have questions about the registration process, I'd be happy to answer those, once I'm done with this part of the presentation. Just to give a little bit of background, this registration is only for refrigeration facilities or facilities that use chillers, all of which have to be over 50 pounds of a high GWP refrigerant. So if we are not talking about air conditioning systems, unless that air conditioning system is using a chiller. So particular kind of equipment, chillers, yes, no matter what the chiller does, that chiller has to register as a refrigeration facility. But if you've got a package air conditioning unit on the roof of the building that you have, then those air conditioning systems are not part of this regulation. So yes to chillers, but no to air conditioning. Otherwise, everything else should be done through the registration, and you'll see as we go through it. So the instructions and all these kinds of information will be on they already are on our website, and I'll show you that at the end of the presentation where you can find all this information. So once you've created the Greenhouse Gas Monitoring and Reporting Rule service selection, you're going to do that by configuring your services. And you'll see that once you hit that Configure Services button, you'll see this list pop up, and you're going to click on the Greenhouse Gas Monitoring and Reporting Rule button here. You can also use this service for other things, like if you have an air permit that you have to apply for, or other kinds of Department of Environmental Protection permits. So in this step here, you're going to come to a screen, and when you get to this screen, you're going to choose to register the facility. This is the first step. You can't do your annual refrigeration facility reporting right now anyway. And the only thing you can't really choose right now, even though both these buttons are here, the only thing that's going to work today is the registration for the facility. So you would click on this button here, and it will then mark it, and you can hit continue. Once you hit continue, you're going to enter in the physical information for your facility. So that'll be the facility name, the NAICS code, and for the facility name, if you're like a supermarket or a store, please put your store number as well, because there's so many of the same type of stores if it has a store number affiliated with it. So if you're like a supermarket, then a supermarket 234, whatever number, the store identifier, please include that. and then the NAICS code for your facility, the tax ID number, and then the physical location. One thing I want to point out to you with the physical location for for the mapping portion of this, in New Jersey, there are a lot of local names for towns. So, and then there's mailing addresses that don't necessarily match the facility location. Some people may have had this problem where when you go to the mapping section, which we're going to get to, the map doesn't map it out right. So, and that's because if you have a mailing address of, let's say, Princeton, but you're actually located in West Windsor, the map is going to come out wrong. So you have to put down the actual name of the town that the facility is in, not necessarily the mailing address. So if you're located in West Windsor, do not put down Princeton as your city location. Okay, so then once you've put in all your information, you don't have to put in the XY coordinates. You can hit map location, and then on the next screen, you'll see where that map is going to show up. So one thing that's important here with the map is that you're going to make sure that the X is located on the map where it's supposed to be. If it is not, you can actually move that map location by clicking on the undo button and then moving it to the actual physical place that it should be. Once you've moved it, you have to then set the location by clicking the set button. And then once you've done all that, you click on the certify that the location is correct. So those are the steps you would have to do to undo the map location if this X is in the wrong spot. If the X is in the right spot, just hit the certification button on the lower left-hand corner and then hit continue. So once again, I do want to remind people that have come new into the I want to remind people that have come in new to the meeting that this meeting is being recorded. All right, so the next step after you've certified your map location is to choose to see if there is already a facility registered at this location. If there is, then you should click the radio button that shows the facility. If there isn't one there, then you can click on create new site. This is important because we only want one facility, one registration per facility. We don't want to see multiple registrations for the same site. And the system is trying its best to limit how many people can register at that site. So you may see a problem occur. And if you do have a facility already registered at your site, then you shouldn't proceed any more. You should contact us to make sure that you know who is registering for this particular refrigeration facility. There should not be more than one per site. Now, if you have like a tenant situation where the tenant has a refrigeration system and you also have a refrigeration system, then again, that's something where you should call us and contact us through our email, and we will instruct you on how to proceed from there. But it is important not to have multiple registrations for the same site. Once you've gotten past that point, you're going to enter in your contact information, and there's 3 types of contacts that we're looking for here. One is for the facility contact, responsible official, and the fees and billing contact. Once you've entered in that information for all that, you will be able to hit continue. So to skip through these things, you just hit the next button. So you fill it in, next, fill it in, next, fill it in, then hit continue. Now you're getting close to the end. In this step, you're just certifying all the information that you supplied us with is true and accurate, and it asks for your challenge and response questions. So, you know, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite sports team? Whatever. You fill in that information. Those are pieces of information you needed to include when you set up your account. And then the next step would be to put in your certification PIN, a password that you are using to get to this point to certify. And then once you've done that, you'll go to the next screen. One of the things that I do want to point out, and that's important, is that you write these pieces of information down. If you don't write down what your challenge questions are, you're going to ultimately forget them, and you're just going to have some problems getting through the process. So I strongly suggest you write these down and keep them in a safe place, because you're going to have this process here. You'll also do this again when you do the reporting every year. So every year, once a year, you're going to have to come in and answer these challenge questions. So, make sure that you know what the answers are to those questions. All right. So, on this screen here, you're now at the point where you're going to pay. You could pay by credit card, you could pay by e-check, you could pay by asking for an invoice. So that's the bill me. If you ask for the bill me, your registration is not complete until the department receives the paid invoice. So that's all paper process. It's not electronic at that point. If you want to get things done more quickly, you can pay by e-check, which is using a routing number and the checking account number, or you can pay by credit card. If you pay by credit card, there is I think it's $9 service fee that goes along with that. So that's an additional fee that you don't have with the e-check or the bill me option. Then once you get past this point, you're done. You'll have a registration, and if you did it by credit card or e-check, you'll have a registration completed. Once you pay the bill me, if you do the bill me, the invoice will be mailed to you. You will have to submit that invoice back with the pay stub, with the payment stub on there, back to Treasury, and then once Treasury gets it, they notify us, and then your registration is complete. So that's how you do the registration process. So now I'm just going to go look in the chat, see what kind of questions we have.
There have been a few questions that come through. I can read them out for you, Kai.
Great. Appreciate that, Gina.
Okay, we have one question from Brian Desselfin. He says, our HVAC contractor informs me that our chiller is 46 pounds. Do we not have to register?
So that has to include all the refrigerant that's in the system, including in the piping. So if that's the condition, 46 pounds is under the threshold, then you do not have to register. You do not have to report.
Okay, great. Moving on, we have questions from Scott Shelsley. He asks, if we registered a location based on HVAC units having over 50 pounds in total, 1, can we deregister? 2, can we be refunded our registration fee?
Okay, so refunding registration fees is a lot more tricky. I don't know if I can guarantee that right now. So that is a problem. But we'll try our best to get that registration refunded. So I don't have a definitive answer on giving the refund. But yes, you can withdraw that particular registration by submitting a facility registration change form. And in that change form, you just have to include some information. I'll go over at the end of the presentation how to complete a registration change form, but you'll submit that registration change form, and in that you'll have a reason for the request. And in the reason for request, you will put in withdrawal. So you're going to withdraw your registration.
Okay, great.
But along with that in that registration, while you're requesting the withdrawal, state that it's because the pieces of equipment are in what we call insignificant or below threshold.
Okay, moving on. Trisha Romano asks, what if your air conditioning system rooftop HVAC unit does not have more than, so this is a similar question coming up, does not have more than 50 pounds of high GWP? That is excluded. is this only for chillers?
So any air conditioning system that is not a chiller, okay, an air conditioning system that is not a chiller is not required at all, regardless of how much refrigerant they have in them, okay? If you're using a chiller for space cooling, all right, then that chiller still would need to be registered. So there's a distinction, and I'm going to tell you the difference of why there's a distinction, because chillers actually leak at a rate much greater than air conditioning systems. So since this is a greenhouse gas monitoring and reporting rule, we are only interested in those things that we believe emit more greenhouse gases. So air conditioning units right now, we're not interested in them because they leak at a very low rate. Chiller systems, that's not true for them. So those are included in the rule, regardless of how they're being utilized. Otherwise, we're only interested in refrigeration systems. So if it's air conditioning, generally it's exempt. The only exception there is if that system is being, the space is being cooled by a chiller.
Okay. And then Rob Walters asks, is the 50-pound limit per circuit as large appliances are defined in 40 CFR 82, or is it per unit, sum of all circuits?
No, it is per circuit.
All right. And then we have Leah Wayne asks, is there a way to edit the contact information after the facility registration has been submitted?
Yes, you'll do that through a refrigeration facility change form. And I'll go over how to complete that again at the end. And that change form is already available on our website. And so you can go there, fill it out and submit it, and we'll change the contact information. There's no fee for submitting the registration change form.
Okay. And then James Simone asks, does NJDEP have a list of all refrigerants covered in this regulation?
Repeat that again, Gina.
Does NJDEP have a list of all refrigerants covered in this regulation?
Well, the list is actually not exhaustive. We do have a list. The list is on the website, and so you can look at that list and see what is there. But that doesn't mean that if you have a high GWP refrigerant that is not on that list, that it is excluded. No, because we expect there to be refrigerants we don't know about. We expect new refrigerants to come onto the market that we don't know about. So as those come on, we still want the facilities to report them. So the high GWP is any refrigerant that's over 150 global warming potential. That means 150 times greater than the global warming potential of carbon dioxide. So that's how we would be looking at that list. It's going to be flexible, and we'll be adding to it as we learn more refrigerants that come onto the market. So the list that is on our website, again, is there for your reference, but it is not a regulatory list, meaning that if it's on there, it's on there. But if it's not on there, then you still may have to, you will have to still report it if that GWP is over 150.
Okay. Moving on, David Carpenter asks, do BOE facilities having multiple sites with chillers over 500 pounds need separate registrations for each site?
Repeat it again.
Do BOE facilities having multiple sites with chillers over 50 pounds need separate registrations for each site?
Yeah, each facility location, unless it's on a campus, okay, meaning like it's a one contiguous area, then we would consider like a campus one facility. But if it's like you've got something located in Princeton, one in Trenton, and another in Vineland, then no, those are separate facilities. They are not contiguous. we will treat them as separate facilities.
Okay. Sydney Griffith asks, we are already registered for an air permit, but went ahead and registered for the refrigeration. Is that okay?
This is not an air permitting rule, so yeah, I mean, okay, this has nothing to do with permitting. If you have an air permit for a particular system of some sort, that has nothing to do with this. So, and also if you're registered with the Department of Labor for your refrigeration facility, that has nothing to do with this. So this is completely separate from air permitting. It is completely separate from the Department of Labor requirements. So yes, any refrigeration facility would have to register for this, even if they have an air permit somewhere else or a Department of Labor registration.
Okay. There were also a few different questions with the same theme, just asking for a more robust definition of chillers. We have a few that said, how do you define chillers? And is there a list what is considered a chiller? So just a little bit more clarification on that.
Okay, well, I don't want to go into the exact definition that we have that is in the rule. What is a chiller? It is also in the rule what's an air conditioner. We also have a very lengthy discussion of the difference between air conditioning and chillers in our rule adoption document. So I will have to put something in the chat later once I find the location for that. So definitely, I understand that people are interested in that particular thing, but it requires maybe a little more reading and you know, but I don't want to cover that here.
Okay.
All right.
Great. Would you want to move on to the next portion of the presentation and then we can get to the rest of the Q&As at the end?
Yes, that'll be great. All right, so let's do that. Thank you, Gina.
Of course.
All right. So now we're going to get into the section that nobody has really seen before. This is the reporting that you will be doing for the record keeping that you have to do for this rule. Registration is the first step. Reporting now is the second step. And the only way that you can do that is through the portal. The same way that you registered, you're going to also go into that portal to do your reporting. Now, I'll tell you that you can go in there today, you can see the button there, but if you click it, nothing's going to happen because it's not available yet. It works, we've tested it, it's ready to go. We're not opening that until the new year. So you have until from January 1 to April 1 to submit your report. So that's when it's going to open on January 1. And then you'll be able to have all that time until April 1st to submit your annual report. You're going to be submitting your first annual report for October 1st to December 31st. So any purchases, charging that you put into the system, material that is stored at the end of the year, material that has been shipped off during this reporting period, all that information from October 1 to December 31st needs to be reported. Okay, so by rule, that's what you have to do. You want to supply additional information, let's say you have the information for the entire year, that's fine, we'll take it. But you're required to keep that record at least from October 1st to December 31st and then report on that. The following year, you're going to do from January 1st to December 31st. So you'll be reporting in 2024 for the entire year of 2023. All right. So this is how you end up doing that. You're going to go into the system and there is going to be so you're going to go to njdeponline.com. You're going to go into your My Workspace section under the My Workspace tab and make sure that you already have registered your facility. If you have registered your facility, you'll be able to see that on your list. If somebody else is going in and creating their own login, they will have to add that facility to their list. And what they really would need to know is the facility ID number. And the facility ID number is an important number. It starts with the letter Y and it's followed by 4 digits. So it's important for you to identify what that number is, because you're going to need that for future registrations, for any time you want to look up, for any registration change form you want to do. That number is going to be important. So if you're not already seeing your facility listed there, you can click on Add Facilities, search by facility ID number, and it should populate. Once you've done that, you'll see that as a facility that's in your My Facilities and Program Interest list. Okay. So now, if you have multiple facilities, so let's say it's a supermarket and you've got tons of them, then you'll see each one listed individually. And you're going to have to do this reporting for each one individually. You can't do them for all at the same time. Okay. So once you've selected your facility and you selected that you're going to do the annual, you're going to then say continue, and then you're going to select the annual refrigeration facility report submission. So that's the second button there. You click in that button and you hit continue. Once you've done that, you'll see the list of facilities that you're going to be you have access to, and that's what's populated in your My Facilities section. Again, if you don't see your facility here, you're going to have to go back a step and make sure that that facility has been added in there. And if you know for sure you registered and you don't see it here, then there could be an issue and you should contact us. But that's unlikely. So once you select the facility that you wish to do the reporting for, you click there and hit continue. Now, this is going to, for everybody, you're going to have an initial report. So when you click on initial, then you'll see the drop down for which year you can submit. Currently, we're in 2022. So for us doing this testing, we can only see 2021 because 2022 hasn't happened yet for reporting. So right now, all we could see is 2021. But when you guys do it, you'll see it'll say 2022. After you've done that, now here's the important part here. You're going to now enter in information for that for one of the particular refrigeration systems. Okay, so if you've got multiple refrigeration systems, you're going to do this again for each piece of equipment that you have at the facility. So if you've got more than one, I'll show you how you'll enter in a second one. But it starts off with the first one, and it will give you a ID for that particular facility. This is your facility ID. Would start off with the letter Y, 4 digits, and then it will populate with a piece of equipment ID. So that would be 001 for the first one. And then it automatically adds a 002, 003, so on for how many pieces of equipment that you're going to be listing. So you'll identify whether the information is commercial or industrial or other. Okay, so commercial refrigeration is used for retail food and cold storage warehouses. Industrial is for those complex customized appliances that is used in the chemical, pharmaceutical, manufacturing industries that are directly linked to the industrial process. You would also use industrial for pieces of equipment that use cooling that may be like in a hospital setting, like an MRI machine or something like that. That would also be considered an industrial. It's not considered commercial, that's considered industrial. But for like cooling, for the chiller situations, that's neither commercial or industrial. So if you're using a chiller for space cooling, then that would be listed as other. Okay, because like I said before, this was really a report for refrigeration systems. However, we're also including chillers. Most likely a lot of chillers that are doing space cooling they'll have to fit in the other category. Okay. Then when you go over to temperature classification, what you're going to be putting in there is whether or not it's a low temperature, a medium temperature, or an other. Okay. Low temperature is for frozen products. Medium temperature is for chilled products. So anything 32 degrees and below, definitely it's low temperature. Anything above that 32, like the 34 degree for keeping things very cold, that's going to be medium temperature. You might put in other for, again, something that's for space cooling. You might put in other for something that's like completely unique. Like maybe you've got a super nano computer or something like that, and you got to chill it down to, 0 degrees Kelvin, right? So that would be like super low temperatures, not really what we're talking about, but yes, we would want to know about it. Again, that's not low temperature because that's extremely cold. That would be an other. Okay, so you would put the full charge of the system in here. So anything that's 50 pounds and over, we want to know about. If it's lower than 50 pounds, you don't have to report it. So that's per circuit. So that's how it's going to be identified and defined. So if you've got a system that's got 1,000 pounds in it, you put the 1,000 pounds right here. And this doesn't matter how many pounds it is. Not like some other states like California, maybe they have different rules for different size equipment. We just have one rule. This is only for greenhouse gas monitoring and reporting. So anything over 50 pounds, we want to know about, and we treat it all the same. So for equipment model, you're going to put in here whether or not it's a whatever the model of the piece of equipment is. You also put in the equipment manufacturer. If it was like a homemade kind of a system, not necessarily homemade, but like built on site, nobody really manufactured it, then just put in a description of what it is, and it's got to be like, I think, limited to 50 characters. So it's not a big deal description. But it has to be identifiable because at some point there could be an inspector that's going to come onto the facility and they're going to say, okay, where is this 1,000 pound rack system? And so you're going to say, okay, well, it's over here. So that you have to be able to identify them. And it has to be identifiable compared to the other 1,000 pound rack system you may have in the same location. All right. So then you'll also put in things like the equipment model and year and the date that it was installed. All right. So those are the pieces of information we want to identify each individual piece of equipment. Along with that, when you scroll down, you'll see that this is where we're listing our high GWP refrigerants that we want you to identify as part of this reporting. So that means that if you are using like a 134A, you will find that on this list. In the upper right-hand corner of this list, there's a search box, and you can actually type in 134A or just 134. It will populate. It will immediately scroll through and find you anything that has 134 in it. Or if you're doing like a 440, you just type in 440, 440 pops up. So if you are also using something that you only know by its like commercial name, like iCore, you type in iCore, iCore will pop up. Or you can go through and search by clicking on each screen. So there's I think like 9 different screens you can go through because there's about almost 100 refrigerants listed here. So each screen has like 10 or so refrigerants being listed, and you can scroll through and find them. Or like I said, you can use the search feature, which seems to be very handy and very useful. Once you find the refrigerant you're using, you put a check mark there. Now, if your refrigerant system uses multiple refrigerants, you will put multiple check marks. So one piece of equipment using 2 different kinds of refrigerant, you will click the check mark for each refrigerant it's using. Okay. be aware there may be some that are using multiple refrigerants, but that's like a brand of refrigerant that has multiple refrigerants in it. Look for the brand first, and that will most likely be there. So, but what's important here is if one refrigeration system uses multiple refrigerants, please click on the different multiple refrigerants that it's using unless it's identified as a single brand name. Okay. So then the next step after you choose and you click save, you move on, you're going to come to this screen where it shows you the information you have just put in. You want to review this information, make sure it is correct. So you'll see the equipment type, the model number, the serial number that you put in, the kind of refrigerant. If you have multiple refrigerants in this section where it says refrigerant type, if you have more than one, it will list more than one refrigerant there. So make sure that information is correct. If anything's incorrect, this is where you need to click on the details button where that's highlighted in red there, and then it will bring you back to the screen prior, and you can make the adjustments that you need to make. But this is an important step. Make sure that the information here is correct. Now, this is where you get to report the information you've been record keeping. Since October 1 for this year to December 31st, you're going to tell us how much you've purchased in that time frame. You will report on what you've put into the system. So, and this is for the particular refrigerant. So if you have multiple systems, all use the same refrigerant, right? You would put just the refrigerant information here, because what the system here does is, let's say you have multiple 134A refrigerant. So what the system will do is it'll only list 134A once. It will not list 134A multiple times. You're going to now put in the information for the individual, for that individual refrigerant for your whole facility. So if you bought 134A for multiple pieces of equipment, you're going to total that up and put that here. I purchased 500 pounds of refrigerant. So all the unit is in pounds for all of this. They're not in gallons or anything like that. So it's always pounds. What's the charge that you put into the system? You may have put less into the machine. You will put that there. How much did you recover? If you recovered any refrigerant, how much are you storing? How much did you ship off for destruction or to be reclaimed? So that, and if you click on each individual information button there, you will see that a little definition of what each one of these things mean. So if you have questions, click on the information buttons and it will populate. I do want to go back one slide though, because I forgot to mention here. This is also where when you're checking to see the information you put in for the first system is correct, you can edit that here. Now, this is also where if you see the add new button in the lower right-hand corner is where you would put in another row. So if you have a second system, you would click that button there, and now you're going to put in the information for that second system. If you have a third, fourth, you will come back to the screen, check your system, and say, okay, that looks great. I'm going to add another row. So you're going to add new equipment here. So in the end, you can have as many pieces of equipment as you have in the facility that are all over 50 pounds of refrigerant, high GWP refrigerant. Okay, so that's where you would click here to add multiple pieces of equipment. And then when you get to this screen, it is a facility-wide per refrigerant. So it's not per piece of equipment, it's per facility for refrigerant. All right, once you've entered in your record-keeping information, you get to the part where you're identifying who's the responsible official. And this is an important step because what happens here is the system will show you this is your responsible official. If this information is correct, you can proceed. If it is not correct, this has to change. You submit a registration change form. The registration change form is one on our website. It's also on our njdeponline.com site where you can go and find the registration form. It's on a tab that's called Documents and Forms in the online system. So you can find it on the online system, the change form, or you can find it on our website, the change form. But what's important here is that you stop at this point because your responsible official is incorrect. We need to change that in the system so that you have the correct responsible official showing up. So you can't change that. We have to change it. But you have to submit that form to us to change it. And this is important too because you may have turnover. So when you get a responsible official populated here, you'll see that it was last year's responsible official if nobody submitted a change form when the responsible official changed. So to change this, a change form has to be submitted. But once that's done, you check and make sure that this information is correct. You can enter in the information for the individual direct knowledge. All right. Then at the end here, you're going to certify the information. If you are the individual direct knowledge, you can certify. If you are the responsible official, you can certify. If you're not one of them, you can always send a notification to that person by clicking the send notification button. So if, let's say, you're a consultant, you're the individual direct knowledge, you certify for your stuff, but then you want to send this off to the responsible official at the industrial facility that's like a refrigeration warehouse or something. You say, okay, send this notification, and it will send it to the responsible official. And then that person would have to log in and sign at the certification spot. And remember, it will ask you your challenge question. Like here, it will ask the challenge question. It will also ask you for your PIN, and you click on the certify button. If you forget these things, you can always click on the I forgot my PIN, and you're going to have to go back and go through the process. But better not to. Better write these things down and have the information on hand when you're doing your reporting, or if you haven't registered when you do your registration. Okay, then once the certifications are done, you can click on continue, and you will get a report that summarizes all the information that you submitted. Keep that report for your records. And if you ever needed to edit this information, you can go back and revise. If you remember, there was I'm just going to jump back a bunch of slides. If, let's say, you found out that there was a mistake in your reporting, you can actually click on revise and then choose the year you want to revise and revise that particular report. Okay. Just so you know, there is that flexibility to correct your own mistakes later. In addition to doing those revisions, each year, what happened now, the first year will be your hardest year because you're going to enter in a bunch of information, especially if you have a facility with multiple pieces of equipment. The following year, when you do the report, all this information will carry forward. So you will see list of equipment without having to enter in the equipment. Then you can just go straight to the reporting screen. So the first year will be harder because you're going to have to enter in all that information, but the second year, it will save all that information. But if you remove a piece of equipment, there is a process for removing equipment, and there'll be a process for adding the equipment. You've seen how to add it. Removing equipment won't be hard. It'll be a button where you click and boop, it's gone, it's deleted. So, but be careful not to do that indiscriminately. Okay. So once you've completed your process, you'll see that you have My Services submitted. You'll see that it was submitted successfully. And those things that, your summary, your history, and the PDF that gets generated all gets logged here. So you can always come back in and look for it. We should have it on hand. I would print it out or save it as a PDF on your own. Just make sure you have it. But it will also be here in our njdeponline.com system. Okay, this is the registration change form, but you know what, Gina, let's take questions about the reporting before I go to the change form.
Okay, there was one leftover question from the previous that says if chillers will be replaced with smaller units after registering that equipment. Do you still want information for the older chillers from this year?
Only if that chiller was in existence from October 1st to December 31st.
Okay.
So yes, if that chiller was in existence. I mean, by rule, you have to. In all honesty, it's useless information. I'm sorry. But the rule says that you'd have to submit that information, so you'd have to submit that information. So that you all know, it actually takes 2 years of data for us to know how much greenhouse gas has been released. So we won't know how much greenhouse gas is released in the first year. We need 2 years of reporting in order to calculate that emission. You don't calculate that emission, we calculate that emission.
Okay. There was also a few questions asking, does full charge, is it per circuit or sum of all charges of circuits?
So, it's the way I understand it, okay, is that a circuit is what we're looking at. So it's going to be per circuit. So that refrigeration loop going to that one refrigeration loop is considered a circuit. So if you've got multiple circuits, then that loop is independent of the other loop. If they're not independent, though, that's something that I'd like whoever's asking the question to have a discussion directly with me so that, we understand what we're talking about.
That question came up more than once, so I'm assuming that it's a common question amongst.
So if that's if there's so like I said, the way I understand it, there's a loop that the refrigerant goes through. That whole loop is one circuit. So if there's another circuit going somewhere else that's independent, it's independent. It's a different. We would consider that a separate system.
Okay. Mark Fisher asks, how do you classify equipment that manufactures ice for food processing?
Say that again.
How do you classify equipment that manufactures ice for
okay.
food processing?
Okay, yeah. Ice manufacturing would be considered industrial. So that would be an industrial piece of equipment. It's manufacturing ice. So yes, that's would be considered industrial, and that would temperature classification would be frozen or low. I mean low temperature classification, and the equipment would be industrial.
All right. We have another question from Joseph Norcia, who asks, how does this apply to a unit that is considered a chiller that has multiple compressors that when combined is over 50 pounds?
If those compressors are like individual units, those individual units are not part of the and have like small amounts of refrigerant in it, those are not what we're interested in. So let's say you have a chiller and the chiller itself has under 50 pounds. And then each individual compressor units that are like little heat pumps or maybe some kind of air conditioning handler, those would not be included. But if the chiller is operating with refrigerant to each one of those units, that's different. That chiller and those units would all be considered part of a loop. So it depends on the setup, and it sounds like to me those are separate, like air handlers, and those separate air handlers would are air conditioning and not part of this rule making.
Okay.
So if I'm understanding that wrong, then you know, again, that person can send me an email or contact me directly.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you my contact information at the end of the presentation, so you'll be able to get in touch with me.
All right. We have another question that asks, what if the equipment is so old that the dates installed and other information is not known?
Then I would, that information is not critical. However, it is important for inspectors to know when that piece of equipment has been there. So you should just put your first known date of that piece of equipment. So if it's been there since the dawn of time, you know, whenever that particular company took over the facility, could be that date. So
Okay.
at least you know it was there when you were there. It's not a critical piece of information, but it is one that we use to identify equipment. So if it's about identifying the equipment. So try to do your best to identify that equipment as accurately as possible. And if you don't know the date, just put the first date that you knew that the equipment existed.
Okay. Matthew Blog asks, what if I bought refrigerant for non-registered equipment?
That's a tough one. I would, if you have a record keeping method for separating it out, then you can separate it out. If you do not have record keeping methods for separating out that refrigerant that you're using for non-listed equipment, then I would suggest you supply us with that information.
Okay.
But it doesn't hurt to give us more information. But if you can't accurately separate out that refrigerant that you purchased. So let's say you bought a bunch of 440 or something like that, and you put it in these pieces of equipment that are regulated, and you put it in these pieces of equipment that are not. If you don't know how to separate out, okay, how much did I put in here? How much did I put in there? Then just give us the total amount for the R440 that you ended up buying.
Okay. Another question, Wes Seagroves asks, in the R3 portal for CARB, there is an option to upload an XML file. Will there ever be an option similar to that for bulk upload in the future, or any type of bulk upload of records?
No, because this information, just to get technical, as you're putting in the information, it's going into a database directly, and then the calculations are performed against it. So we would not be able to accept the bulk upload of that information, and to be able to process the data in a way that we can do the calculations that we need to do. So no.
All right. Moving on, Michael Schaefer asks, how long will it take to update the registration if you submit a change form?
It shouldn't take that long. It all depends on what's being requested. If it's a withdrawal, we can do withdrawals you know, as they come in. If it's a information change, like a responsible official, we can do it pretty quickly. It all depends on just how many pieces of information are coming in. Staff is limited on how to do that. So if it becomes like a tidal wave of change forms, it will take longer. But as of right now, there have been, I don't know, a couple change forms already submitted, probably in the area of like 20, 25, not hard to handle. But, you know, if let's say it comes time for reporting and a bunch of responsible officials all have to get changed for 1,000 facilities, yeah, that'll bog us down pretty good, and it'll take a long time. But I don't expect that to happen. I expect only to have like a handful in any given week.
Okay.
So I would say that our response time will be a couple days at max.
All right. I know that we're nearing the end of the time that we had, so I'm going to ask two final questions from the chat, and then I'm going to hand it back over to Kai. One question is from Michael Curtis. He said, should responsible officials from the site be site ownership, or can facility management be the person listed as the responsible person?
Well, responsible person, responsible official is someone that is going to be responsible for the information that's being handled here. So if there's a mistake or a problem or an error or a notice of violation that has to be issued, it'll be issued to that responsible official. So it's whoever wants to have that authority. Usually we like to have it to be somebody that's a vice president or above in the organization. So that might give you an idea of like who should be doing it. So each corporation is different. It does not have to be the owner. It can be management, but it should be somebody who is familiar with the information being submitted and understanding that if there is a violation that has to be issued, that they're going to be the one receiving it.
Okay. And the final question that I have is by Gerald Schnick, and he asks, please confirm my understanding. 1, only chiller equipment needs to be registered, and 2, all refrigerant, regardless of type, needs to be reported.
No, for both. So the chillers, repeat that question again. I just want to make sure I'm answering it right.
Okay, the first part is only chiller equipment needs to be registered.
Okay, let's stop there. So no, refrigeration systems need to be reported, okay? And chillers need to be reported. So that's going to be the distinction. So yes, chillers have to be reported, but also refrigeration systems have to be reported. What does not have to be reported is an air conditioning system that has nothing to do with the chiller. So
Okay,
what's the second part of that?
the second part was all refrigerant, regardless of type, needs to be reported.
Again, no. Only refrigerants that have a global warming potential of 150 for the 100-year time frame. So that's so like refrigerants that are propane refrigerants, they're very, very low. They do not have to report that refrigerant. They do not have to report any refrigerant that's 149 global warming potential. All right. So only those that are 150 and above, that kind of refrigerant has to be reported.
All right, I'm going to pass it back over to you, Kai, because we are currently past the time that we had in the meeting. So I'm going to let you wrap it up.
I'm going to quickly go through a couple last slides. If you guys want to hang on, this shouldn't take long. All right. So the registration change form is here. It's a 2-page form. Most of the important information is right up front. We need the facility ID number so that we can look it up easily. That starts with the letter Y and is followed by 4 numbers. So that's really important. Put the date that the change occurred, the facility name, and the reason for the change. These are the most important pieces of information. If you were going to you tell us that it's the responsible official change. Tell us the facility contact or billing person changed. Tell us the name of the store is no longer what it was. It's something else now. If you want to withdraw a registration, say we're withdrawing the registration and tell us why. This form actually gets attached into our database and it's left there as part of the record. Without this form, we will not change the information that that you might want to request. So you can't just send me an email saying, "Hey, change my responsible official name. It's this guy now." No, it has to come with this form because it goes into the database. It's part of the official record. So any information that you're putting on below the reason for change is going to be the information as it is that, from that point onward. So if your mailing address changed, put the new mailing address there. If your NAICS code's changed or anything else, or the responsible official stuff, the names are there changed, put that information in there, put new information in there. So that's how you would fill that out. And that on the form, it tells you that it should go to the email address of ghgmrr at dep.nj.gov. So that's where you email that form to. And I will show you where you find all this stuff. You find all this stuff on our website. So that's dep.nj.gov/ghg/rule/refrigeration. On this website, you'll see that there's a list of the high GWP refrigerants. So you can go through and take a look at the list that we have. And remember, that's not an all-inclusive list. There may be refrigerants on that list that need to be added. And if you do find a high GWP refrigerant that needs to be added, let us know. But again, if it's a low GWP refrigerant, you won't find it on that list. It's not regulated. We don't care about it, like the propane or something like that. You also see the applicable rules on this website. So if you want to look at the rules, look at the definitions, you'll see what we say is a chiller. You'll see what we say is air conditioning. You'll see what we mean by commercial or industrial. Look at the definitions. So then there's the registration change form is also available on that website. Refrigeration registration instructions are available right now on that website. And coming soon, we're going to add the annual refrigerant reporting instructions. It's not there yet. We're just fine tuning it, and we'll post it, but it'll be there soon, well before you'll ever have to report. And so that's where you go to for all your information. And so this is my information here, and I'm the bureau chief for the Bureau of Sustainability. We do have a couple different programs. One of the programs that we have is a small business environmental assistance program that's bringing this presentation to you today. They work hard to put this information together for you. We also do the pollution prevention program. Plus, we do a number of sustainability programs in our section, all of which I would welcome you guys to participate in because it makes those businesses that participate in these activities more competitive in the real world. So, and there's my information. So my email address is there. My work cell phone number is there. And our website. That's our general website. But for the refrigeration information, you'll need to go to the other website that we have, and that's this one. And if you Google search NJDEP refrigeration registration, it'll bring you right. The first choice will be the refrigeration website. So that's the stuff that we want to cover today. I don't want to I don't want to leave any of your questions unanswered. So hopefully, I think maybe we can go through our chat after this and see what questions have been asked. But if you have anything that you want to address directly with me, please feel free to email me today. Again, my email address is ky.asral, ASRAL, @dep.nj.gov. Okay. I noticed that there's a couple hands up. I could take a couple questions, but I don't want to, have people hanging on if they want to get going. So let me see. Hold on. Let's see. Cynthia has a hand up. Let me turn on your mic, Cynthia. Go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Just so you know, some of us don't have the chat function. So, so I just wanted to ask, you mentioned a couple times about on-site inspections. Is that something, I didn't recall reading that in the rule. Is that something that's going to be a change for the future, or did I miss something?
The rule doesn't specifically talk about inspections, but inspections are part of the department's authority. So, and the rule is enforced. So that means if a facility, any violation that would occur for this particular rule is considered a minor violation. Okay. So that means that if, let's say, an inspector shows up at a facility and notices that it has a high GWP refrigeration system that was never registered, the inspector will give that facility a notice of violation. Okay. That notice of violation will direct the facility to register. There will be no penalty involved in that initial notice of violation. After 30 days goes by and no registration comes in, the inspector can issue a notice of violation for not complying and issue a penalty. I think the first violation is like $500. So, but then it doubles every 30 days that if there's still non-compliance. So yes, inspections are part of this, but these inspections are not there to check for leaks. These inspections are not there to tell you what to do. It's just really to say, hey, did you register? Did you report?
Thanks.
Okay. And let's see, I'm going to unmute Casey. You're mute. You can unmute yourself, Casey, if you want to ask a question. Oh, okay. So your question is, how do we watch the webinar? So it's being recorded. We will post it to the same web page for the refrigeration web page. So you'll find it there. It takes a couple, I don't know, hours for teams to process the video. Probably will not be there today. So I will try to get it posted within the week. Okay. I see Samantha with a hand raised. I'm going to open your mic. Go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you for taking my question.
Your volume's a little low. Can you speak up a little bit?
Sure. So I was the one who asked about the circuits and the reporting the total pounds for the equipment when we get to that. So say you have a chiller that has 2 circuits, each 50 pounds. What are you looking for in that reporting? Are you looking for 50 pounds because you're saying that's the circuit, or are you looking for me to put in 100?
Okay, so since it's when it comes to the reporting portion, okay, it'll be per refrigerant. So you can have the chiller, and if the chiller is one chiller, right, and even though that's handling 2 circuits, it's still one chiller. So that's one piece of equipment. Then you're really only identifying the chiller there. So one piece of equipment, and then you're going to go off and see the reporting for the kind of refrigerant. I'm assuming it's the same refrigerant.
Yes, it is. Even though the 2 circuits are completely independent of each other, but I'll still report 100 pounds for that piece of equipment for the details page. Is that correct?
Okay, so I mean, this is a very interesting situation. You could handle it one of 2 ways. Since the circuit we're considering one circuit to be a piece of equipment, you could actually identify each circuit individually, okay, and then separate them out that way. You can do that.
Okay.
Okay, so you would have 2 pieces of equipment, but still, when you go to report the refrigerant, you're only reporting on the one refrigerant because you only have one.
Right. And then just to, we're confirming, if we do have enough recording differentiation, we are only required to report on the refrigerant for the registered pieces of equipment.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Frank. I'm allowing your mic. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I just wanted to clarify. I have 8 buildings, and if they all take, say, the R134, and in a year's time I buy 400 pounds, if I have a building where I didn't install any R134, I still have to show that I bought 400 pounds, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so all 8 buildings are going to have the same purchase amount. They're just going to have different charged, how much use amounts, right?
Okay, so are all the buildings on the same campus, or are these buildings located in different
No,
campuses?
I'm a school district, so I'm all around one town.
I see. Okay. So when you registered, did you register as one facility?
No, I registered 8 different facilities.
So when you buy the 134, you're buying it for the district,
Yes.
and you don't know how much you're allocating for each location.
Well, I mean, when we charge, I can weigh it and I'll know how much I put in. But I'm just asking, do all 8 buildings have the same amount that I purchased, even though I'm not using the R134 this year at a specific building?
Frank, I'll have to do a calculation first to understand how that's going to impact the greenhouse gas emission calculation. Because I wasn't expecting people to purchase for multiple facilities,
I understand. Yes.
So I don't think I want to have information coming in that 8 facilities purchased, let's say 100 pounds of 134, right? Because then to us, it will look like that there's 800 pounds actually purchased.
Right. That's why I'm asking the question. I mean, because we go out for public bid and I buy it, say in July, and I buy enough to last me for the year, then, I'm buying it in bulk, and I don't know which facility I'm going to be using, if at any.
Understood. Yeah. My initial instinct is that you would divvy that up among the 8, not to tell us that you have, like I said, I don't want to end up with a calculation where you guys have 800 pounds of refrigerant saying that you purchased 800 pounds, you really only purchased 100 pounds. So, yeah, for that, I would say that you'd have to divvy it up per facility. That's my initial inclination without doing the calculation. So somehow you would have to say, okay, so much was purchased, and maybe you're just going to have to say how much you're giving to each facility. So if you're charging it at the facility, your charge and your purchase may be the same, but in the end, you're going to store a certain amount at one of the locations. So that's something you and I, we can talk about that.
Okay, I have your information. I can send you mine.
Yeah, thank you. That'll
Okay,
be good.
thank you.
All right. All right. And Dave, I'm gonna allow your mic so you can unmute yourself, Dave Carpenter.
Okay, you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, I understand with the chillers, I also work in the school district. And so I understand all the questions on the chillers that we have, but on the refrigeration end, the question I had was, you refer to refrigeration, where is the line drawn as far as whether we have to register refrigeration equipment? We have multiple schools with kitchens with refrigeration. Is it
So it's a 50 pound per piece of equipment or 50 pound per circuit. So it, like a standalone refrigerator, has nowhere near 50 pounds in it. Okay, you're not going to add those up or anything like that. So a standalone refrigerator, small, we're not interested in those. That's not what we mean. So it has to be a refrigeration system that has at least 50 pounds to make that piece of equipment operate correctly. And so that's probably not what you're going to find in the kitchen.
Right. No, absolutely not. That's just wasn't sure where the line was, if it was 50 pounds for refrigeration as well as the chillers.
Right. And that's 50 pounds of high GWP refrigerant, anything over 150 GWP. So if, like I said, if you're using some of these like new refrigerants that have propane in them, or, then no, that's low GWP. That doesn't count. Oh, ammonia systems, they don't count. So ammonia is not a greenhouse gas. It doesn't count.
Gotcha. Okay, terrific. Thank you.
All right. Let me see. Carrie, I'm gonna unmute your mic. You can unmute yourself now. Carrie W.
Yes, I apologize if this has been asked already, but I work for a large company. We have over 50 stores in the state of New Jersey. We don't purchase refrigerant. Our vendors just install it when it's needed. Do we need to say
They don't charge you for it?
Well, they do. They do.
Okay. Then you purchase it.
So our emissions would be the same as our purchase at any given site. If we emitted 100 pounds, we would say we purchased 100 pounds.
So what you will do there is, let's say, okay, so your service technician comes on, they charge into the system 100 pounds. So that's how much you purchased, that's how much you charged.
Perfect. Okay. That's my question. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. And Dan, I'm going to unmute you. Okay, Dan, go ahead. You can unmute yourself. Dan, hello. If you hit unmute on the mic in the upper right-hand corner, or I think so, on the upper right-hand corner. Okay. Well, I think that's it. If he says not on a, okay, if you have a question, Dan, you could maybe throw it in the chat. Does purchase amount need to, okay, that's a good question. Does purchase amount need to include initial charges? So during the reporting period, if you're bringing on a new system and you're going to put an initial charge, the initial charge is not part of any of this information. The initial charge that you're doing for a new system, we don't want to know about it. So let's say you brought in a new system in November, and you put 1,000 pounds of refrigerant in there. We don't want to know. It's not part of our calculation. So now, anytime anything after the initial charge, yes, we want to know. So yeah, that's definitely the situation. No information on initial charge needs to be reported. Okay. All right. Let's see. I'm going to go to one more person and then we're going to close the session. I see here Nicole Jones has a hand up. I'm going to allow your mic. You can unmute yourself, Nicole. Nicole, you have to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. If you can't ask a question, you can type it in the chat. No? Okay. I don't know why it's not allowing you to unmute, but can you ask your question in the chat? Oh, so when it comes to full charge, there is a question in the equipment specification, right? How much is the full charge? In the equipment specification, you're going to tell us what the full charge is. So if the full charge is 1,000 pounds, you're going to type 1,000 pounds, okay? In the equipment description, where you put model, make, all that kind of info, the temperature classification, one of the questions there is, what is the full charge? Yes, we want to know what the full charge is. So if you have a new piece of equipment, you're going to and then you got it in November, you're going to report on that new piece of equipment. Here's the piece of equipment. It takes 1,000 pounds, right? But then after that, you didn't put anything else in. You're going to put zeros across the board when it comes to how much refrigerant is in there. So you're reporting on refrigerant. You bought a new system in November. It's 1,000 pounds. You told us that as a part of the equipment, but in the reporting for that year, you're going to put zeros across the board. So that would be your report on that piece of equipment that's brand new. You don't tell us that you purchased 1,000 pounds. No. Let's see. So it's full charge capacity. So if you have a full charge and the capacity is more than 50 pounds, but you keep it below the threshold of 50 pounds, that would not, no, the rule specifically says what it is for normal operating amount for that particular piece of equipment. If the manufacturer spec or the piping calculations that can be done to figure out how much is supposed to be in that system for a full charge, that's what we go by, not how much you keep in the system. So let's say you have a system that is 60 pounds is the full charge, but hey, I could run this thing at like 49 pounds and not have to worry about this. No, that would be a violation. If we see that the manufacturer spec says it's a 60-pound machine, it's a 60-pound machine. If we can do the calculation that how much is supposed to be in that system, then we because there is no manufacturer spec, then we do the calculation. Then we see, okay, well, this is supposed to be a 60-pound machine. You should be reporting. So that's how we would handle that. So yeah, keeping a piece of equipment under 50 pounds just to avoid reporting would actually be listed as a violation. Okay. All right. I think I'm going to stop here. And like I said, thank you very much. I do appreciate the attendance for this webinar. And if you have questions, you can always reach out to me and ask the question by email. You can contact me by phone. However, not today by my cell phone because, believe it or not, I left it at home. But yeah, you could definitely reach out to me by email today. But normally you can reach me by my work cell phone. I'll also give you my office phone number. For those of you still on, it's 609-633-0631. That's 609-633-0631. So thank you very much for attending, and hopefully, this has been informative for you. Have a good afternoon.